One of the things we like at Family History Fanatics is to be able to have viewer questions. And that is because viewers come up with questions that in a lot of cases we haven't thought of, or scenarios that are probably applicable to many other people. And so today we're going to be going over one of those, not questions, but actually follow-up questions to one of the past questions we had. And this had to do with multiple relationships. So let's get into this viewer's question. My maternal paternal great-grandfather married my maternal great-aunt, and they had a child. This child is double related to whom? Both my grandparents? How would this child's children and grandchildren be related to me? And does the DNA percentages work out the same as in the video? So you can see from this, we have actually multiple questions that we need to answer. And to do that, we're going to follow a lot of the same principles we followed in some of the other videos. First, we're going to break down the question. We're going to draw it out and see if we can't figure out an answer to this viewer's question. So let's begin with this first sentence. We have so this person we'll just call V for the viewer, my maternal paternal great-grandfather. So that's going to be G. So let's draw this out, and we end up with something that looks like this. Now, we don't necessarily know who all of these other people are, but we know who V is and we know who G is. And those are the important ones here. So next, this maternal paternal great-grandfather, G, married my maternal great-aunt, and they had a child. So we have two more people into this. We have A, the maternal great-aunt, and the child of the maternal great-aunt and the maternal paternal great-grandfather. I hope you're not getting too confused here. But we can again draw this out, and we come up with a chart that looks something like this. So the question we want to ask ourselves is, who do we really care about? And we can black out anybody whose DNA we don't need. Usually this is going to be spouses who are then unrelated through the different chains. So in this case, you can see I've blacked out these spouses whose DNA is not going to be contributing to any of the matches that we're concerned with. This child, C, is double related to whom? So the viewer recognizes that this child has a double relationship, but she wants to know, how is this child double related? And she makes a suggestion of both my grandparents. Let's draw out the different relationships. First off, with this blue line, we see that C is related to V by going through G down to V's mother. We can also see that C is related through A going around and down to V's mother. So the first double relationship actually is with V's mother. And then naturally, any of her descendants are also going to be double related to C. So since the viewer is the child of her mother, she is going to be double related. Now, what relationships are these? Well, we can again look at the map and we can see that this first relationship is a half niece. And this second relationship is a first cousin once removed. Okay, so we know what those two relationships with the mother is, which means we can figure out the relationships with any of the mother's descendants. Now, going back to this question, I did notice something. The suggestion that the viewer made was, is this person related to both of my grandparents? And we found out that this person is actually related just to the mother of the viewer, not to the grandparents, which made me think, could I have possibly drawn this wrong? In other words, I saw maternal paternal, and I assumed that this is through the mom's dad, that great-grandfather. And this one is through the mom's great-aunt, which would be on the same line since they're both starting with the mom. But if what she really meant was my dad's mom's great-grandfather and my mom's great-aunt, then what I've drawn is actually going to be different. And so there might be some confusion there. But I'm not going to redraw this because I actually don't know which one it is. So I'm going to continue on with what I have drawn already. And you, as the viewer, can go and actually redraw this in the other way to see how those relationships would change. But let's go on to the second part of her question. How would this child's children and grandchildren be related to me? So we've introduced two more relationships. The children of this child, C, we'll label that D, and the grandchildren, we'll label this B because we've already used G for this great-grandfather. We have these two relationships initially to the mother. So what we need to do first is we need to figure out the relationships to V. And by doing that, we're actually just going to go down one generation. So you can see here, this becomes a half-grandniece. And this becomes a first cousin twice removed instead of a first cousin once removed. Now we have those relationships, which are going to help us determine the other relationships, but we're going to have to redraw our chart here and put in the children and the grandchildren of C. Once again, blue line is one relationship, purple line is another relationship. As we follow the relationships from D, we see that this is a half first cousin once removed. And as we follow the other relationship around, we find that this is a second cousin once removed. So now we're going to look at the relationships with B. Again, we have lines drawn so you can see how that's flowing. And this first one we see is actually a half second cousin. And this other relationship is a third cousin. So that would be how the children and the grandchildren of C are related to B. And yes, this does get a little bit complicated, which is why I like to draw things out to be able to trace how these relationships are going. So that answers the first two of this viewer's questions. So then we come to their last question. Does the DNA percentages work the same way as in the video? And the simple answer there is yes, it does. Anytime you have multiple relationships, in order to figure out how much DNA you should be expecting, remember, each relationship's going to have a range. You need to take whatever that range is for the one relationship and add it to the range for another relationship. Now, in this case, both of these ranges, a half second cousin and a third cousin, start at 0. So you might not actually share any DNA with the grandchildren of C. But a half second cousin is going to share somewhere up to around maybe 200 centimorgans. I don't have the chart in front of me. And a third cousin is going to share somewhere around 125 centimorgans. So you could actually share maybe as much as 300 or a little bit more centimorgans with this person. Now, if you didn't know that you had a double relationship, then having those two added together might make it look like it's a much closer relationship, like it's a second cousin, but you're not finding them anywhere on your tree in that case. That's why we need to always think of multiple relationships when people aren't showing up where they are based on the amount of DNA that we share with them. Now, I like to do these questions about multiple relationships because almost all of them are pretty unique. And it usually challenges me to go out and draw what is happening. In fact, I'm going to show you what I had to do to get to this point. Initially, I was drawing this right here, and I realized, nope, that's not working right. And so I went to this right over here, but I realized, no, that's also not working right. And then I drew another little thing here, but no, the relationships didn't match up the way I wanted. And finally, I went and started drawing this here. And you can see they're starting to get a little bit more complex as I'm drawing them. And in this case, yeah, it was. But this was just the initial sketch that I didn't really like. And so I had to rearrange that sketch to create this sketch here. And from there, it was a lot easier to try to figure out what these relationships were. So in the video here, it looks like, hey, I throw up this pretty picture, but there was actually a pretty involved process of trying out different ways of what I think was happening here in order to get the right picture to be able to explain it. And that's why I recommend whenever you come across something that is difficult as far as relationships, start by drawing out a tree of how those people are connected. Make sure all of the known relationships that you have match up with that tree then before going forward. Now, if you like this video and you want to watch something else about multiple relationships, then check out this video up above. Be sure to click a like and subscribe to our channel so that we can give you more videos each week. One things